Greetings, everyone, and welcome to yet another Halloween horror movie review. Got a big one for you this time. I don't know if it'll be big in terms of running time, but it'll at least be big in terms of movies covered. A quadruple bill. Yes. You know that this is a series, I saw the first one, I think, about 4 years ago, and I actually did do a review of it. I'll post the link to that old review of the first one in the description, so be sure to check that one out first, because I'll be kind of referring back to some of the things I said in that. And then watch this one. So basically, there's been a few sequels to that particular movie that have come out since, and I thought it was high time I sat down and got caught up, especially since my geeky.com compatriots, Stoudman and Skinslip, really enjoyed this series and have been talking about it for a while and saying, Sean, you gotta catch up on this series. It's actually is developed into something really cool, and I think you'd really enjoy it. So and I did enjoy the first one. There were aspects of it that I didn't like, but you can take a look at the old review and get the details there. But overall, I thought it was quite an effective horror film. So I wanted to check out the rest and see how it has evolved. So I'm, of course, talking about the Paranormal Activity series. So here, we're going to talk about Paranormal Activity 2, Paranormal Activity 3, Paranormal Activity 4, and the sort of mid-quel, but that goes more or less between 4 and 5, the marked ones as well. So, Paranormal Activity quadruple bill today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. Alrighty, now here's the problem. I only have 2 stands, so I'm not sure how we're gonna do this here. Let's figure this out. Hold on. So that's 2, 3, 4, and marked ones, kinda, maybe like that. There, that sort of works. Okay, so piles of Paranormal Activity today. Now, I guess as a whole, let me sort of address some of the common complaints I see about this series and why I think those common complaints are kind of bullshit. Yeah, well, one of the big ones, of course, if you're not a fan of the so-called found footage genre, or as I like to call it, horror movies that look like home movies, to begin with, then obviously you're not going to enjoy these, because that's what these are all about. I mean, they've made a horror saga out of that subgenre of horror. So if you don't like those types of movies to begin with, why are you watching these movies in the first place? Just to say you didn't like them? Like, well, obviously you wouldn't like them because you don't like those kinds of movies. So don't watch them. Just go away. The other thing is a lot of comments that I see about the minimalistic approach to the supernatural events. It really seems to be a divide, to me, between people who have imagination and people who don't have imagination. Because the people who don't have imagination look at these movies and they say, what? A door opened. Ooh! Those who do have imagination see the door open and realize what it actually is. A door has opened, indicating that something unseen has just entered the fucking room. Like, I just don't understand how people don't get that. It's not about what you see and what's spoon-fed to you. It's about, these movies encourage you to use your imagination. And I've talked about sort of minimalistic approaches to haunted house stories before. And there's a few really good examples of them, such as the original Haunting from the 60s. There's also The Uninvited, which I'll be talking about very shortly, which is one from the 40s. And, of course, there's The Legend of Hell House from the 70s, which are all fantastic haunted house movies that really don't show you very much. They leave a lot of it up to your imagination. It's all about building suspense and tension and atmosphere and such. And that's what these movies do. That's what these movies do, but in a different style. I mean, it's a different visual style, obviously. Those three classic movies were much more cinematic and, visual in terms of the environment and whatnot. Whereas these ones take a more minimalistic approach, either security cameras or, home video cameras and whatnot. And, but it's the same principle. It's basically taking that minimalistic approach of less is more to engage your imagination. But I guess if you don't have any imagination to begin with, there's nothing there to engage. I actually feel really sad for people like that who cannot take that leap, and they'll see something and take it completely at face value, where it's like a door opened. It's like, you just don't get it. It's like, yes, a door opened, implying this. Something else, something moved, implying this. It's an indication of something being there in the room, doing shit. And I just don't know how people can't get that. I think the other thing is, one thing I see a lot of comments about is, well, I don't believe in ghosts, so I didn't find this scary. Okay, then why? But you believe in Jason or Freddy? Like, how is that any more or less a leap of logic or a leap of suspension of disbelief than a good old fashioned ghost story? I mean, ghost stories have been around. They're probably the oldest form of horror story, told around the campfire or told as little urban legends to make sure the kids go to bed on time, and. I just don't understand how, you can watch zombie movies and everything else and love them, but a ghost story is just right out because I don't believe in ghosts. Okay, so you believe in zombies then? Like, I just don't understand that. I mean, with a horror movie in particular, there needs to be a certain suspension of disbelief. I mean, the whole purpose of watching a horror movie is to get scared. So how do you do that? Well, very simple. You put yourself in the situation that the characters are in. You think, well, what would I do in that situation? Or, just if that was happening to me, how would that make me feel? I mean, it's not difficult, people. It really isn't. I mean, and that goes for really any movie, is you put yourself in that situation. You suspend disbelief. Within even if you don't believe in ghosts in real life, within the reality of this ghost movie that you're watching, ghosts exist. Just accept it. That is the reality of this story, and you either take it or leave it. And if you're going to leave it, then why the fuck are you even watching the movie to begin with? I mean, if you don't believe in ghosts and you don't find ghost stories scary, why are you watching a ghost story movie in the first place? Same thing as if you don't like found footage movies, why are you watching a found footage movie? So, yeah. So hopefully that kind of puts my position on the table as far as, the way I like to approach these kinds of movies. And, it seems to me like a lot of people are watching horror movies wrong. Yes, it is possible to watch a movie wrong. You're not doing it right. Horror movies, you're doing it wrong. Stop it. I mean, you know what you like. Why would you watch things that you don't like? I just don't get it. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the sequels here. So Paranormal Activity 1, was a fairly straightforward haunted house / demonic possession story, with the novel twist being that it was done in the found footage style, which we've seen a couple times before with some other standalone ones. I talked about, the St. Francisville experiment, for example, which I enjoyed. I know a lot of people just saw it as a Blair Witch ripoff, which clearly it was, but I thought it was an entertaining one, so I had no problem with that. Plus, it was a haunted house story, and I'm just a sucker for haunted house stories. So, Paranormal Activity 2 is kind of interesting in that it's mostly a prequel to the first one. It takes place before the first one, and then the last little bit of it kind of parallels the first one. So, I guess you could watch the second one first if you were going to watch them in chronological order. However, there are aspects well, the very tail end of the second. It's like you would watch the second one up to a certain point and then stop, and then go and watch the first one, and then come back to watch the end of the second one. That's kind of how the continuity goes. But as a, as a continuation and as sort of another side of the story, I actually really enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was a pretty decent continuation. And of course, as always, the husband has to be a bit of a douche. I didn't find him as douchey as I did the guy in the first one, but still certain aspects that just made me want to slap the shit out of him. But but yeah, overall, definitely some good stuff. There's some baby peril in it, pretty profound baby peril that some people may take exception to. But given the revelations that occur in this one as to the nature of the evil and why it's plaguing this family, and, well, all generations of this family, it makes sense. It is, within context. And, as much as I don't like baby peril or kid peril, it makes sense in this story, and it is perfectly understandable why that is happening. It's disturbing and scary, but it makes sense. So this is not a nice story. This is a story about some bad shit that went down, and some decisions that were made that resulted in a lot of bad shit going down. So definitely the second one, I'd say, is a pretty integral chapter because it gives you a lot of background information, and much of the following movies actually refer back to events. In fact, there is some stuff mentioned in the second one that relates directly to the third one. So moving on to the third one is an even farther back prequel. We actually get to see, there is some information alluded to in the second one about the two main female characters, the two sisters from the second one, and I think she's mentioned briefly in the first one as well. Well, in the third one, we finally get to see what happened when those two sisters were kids that kind of, well, set a lot of these events in motion. And what they did as kids may or may not have been integral in setting it in motion. It may have actually been something else that just happened to occur around that period in time. But of the sequels so far, I have to say actually the third one is my favorite. It takes place in the 80s, in the late 80s. And this is also the first one in which I really liked the husband character. In this one, it's kind of a role reversal from the other two. The husband is the competent, rational one, and the wife is the one who doesn't want to listen to reason. So, nice they did a little flip-flop there. But, excuse me. But, yeah, the third one, I really enjoyed the third one a lot, probably because I'm an 80s kid. So the main, the husband character is actually a videographer in that one. I was kind of wondering, like, how are they going to do this set in the 80s with, like, the video equipment that was available in the 80s? And I think they came up with actually some very clever solutions to that. The only one aspect, like technical aspect, you kind of have to suspend your disbelief is like, yes, they were totally filming in 16:9 high definition video in 1988. Okay, we'll let that one go just because, it makes for a nicer looking movie. But other technical aspects of it, such as the clock and the time that's on the screen, are very 80s. The little sounds that the cameras and the video equipment make are exactly the kinds of sounds video equipment made back then. So they made it as authentic as possible, while just giving it the high definition quality, obviously. But story-wise, again, we get a lot more. I've come to look at the Paranormal Activity series as a giant onion, and each successive movie or chapter in the saga peels back a layer of that onion. So we're getting more and more and realizing that there's a lot more going on here. So if you've only seen the first one, you're really getting just a tiny, tiny piece of the story. I mean, it is clear that they had a plan going in, and they have stuck to that plan. And the sequels really mesh together very, very well. Like, I haven't found, like, I've been looking for little continuity discrepancies and such, and I really have not found any. It all actually ties together very, very well. So they clearly had a plan and know what they're doing here. So the third one, we basically have the two sisters when they were kids, and kind of an imaginary friend that they used to play with that, you know, at first they think he's nice, but of course we know better, don't we? Needless to say, things get very intense. There's some really cool subtle moments, and actually if there's things where you know, your primary complaint was you don't get to see the ghost, you kind of get to see the ghost in this one. Kinda. In fact, there's a great reference to the old ghost in a sheet gag that, you know, the old classic ghost in the sheet that I just thought was brilliant in this. I thought it was really, really well done, suitably subtle, and very effective. And there's just some really great chilling moments. In particular, one of the things I really liked about this one, and I think they used really, really well, is obviously they didn't really have security cameras per se that they could use. So what they would do is set up, you know, one of the old clunky '80s video cameras, and the husband gets the idea to use the one of their oscillating fans. So he takes the fan part off and just keeps the oscillator, and mounts the camera on that, so it's constantly panning back and forth. So it'll pan to, like pan to the kitchen, and then it'll pan over to the living room, where you can also see some of the front entrance, and then it'll pan back. But you know, I mean, it's just this slow pan, and then, you know, there'll be nothing going on. Then it'll pan over there, and there'll be something happening. And you're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, and it'll slowly pan away. It's like, oh no, 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 go back, go back, go back. And it'll go back, and then it'll come back, and then there'll be something else, or there'll be nothing again, and it fucks with you, and in a beautiful, beautiful way. I really thought that was an effective technique used effectively. Yeah, so I think thus far the third one is my favorite of the sequels. I really like how they constructed the suspense in it, and just all the different things that go on back in the 80s. So Paranormal Activity 4, we're back in present day, and this one is more or less a direct sequel to the second one. I actually really liked this one too. I thought the characters in it were actually very, very likable. Really liked the main girl here and her boyfriend. I thought they were very, very likable characters. Not too many douchebags in this one. They seem to be, you know, slowly moving away from the douchebags, or so I thought. But we'll get into that in a minute. And the funny thing is, the girl who plays the main character in this reminded me a lot of a girl I used to work with back at Best Buy. She was almost a dead ringer for her, and just kind of her attitude and stuff like that, very similar. It's kind of creepy. So I kept seeing in my mind's eye that girl I used to work with as her in these crazy, scary situations. So it was kind of funny. It just kind of, it messed with me on a different level than it probably messes with everyone else. But yeah, really enjoyed that one. So once again, we have, in this case, we have more or less a direct continuation of the second one, with, at first, because it follows different characters. So at first you're thinking, well, what does this have to do with the other ones? And they obviously do that deliberately, but it becomes apparent very early on how it's related, and it actually answers a lot of questions that are left open from the end of the second one. So we had kind of this pause where we dive back into the past with number 3, and then we have the fourth one, which finally answers some of those lingering questions, but then presents other questions. And yeah, it's pretty good. The last like 15 minutes of this one is so freaking intense and has so many genuinely shocking moments that boy, that's what keeps you coming back. Is you wait. I mean, all of these movies are structured very similar, in that the first half hour or so you're just kind of getting to know the characters and what they're all about, and learning their little stories. And then the second 30 minutes is when the crazy, the subtle supernatural things begin to happen and things start to get weird. And then the last 30 minutes is where the shit just hits the fan, and it gets really intense. And it's more or less that structure for all of them. But I mean, that makes perfect sense. That's a perfectly logical structure. So there is a Paranormal Activity 5 on the way. In the meantime, we have this one, Paranormal Activity, The Marked Ones. Another one where you're kind of watching it at first and thinking, what the heck does this have to do with the other ones? But interestingly enough, it actually ties in very nicely with events from the second one. There's a couple of... You got to pay attention, though, because there's a couple of very subtle references back to the second one that actually answers some questions about the second one that, again, were lingering and were hinted at, answers that were hinted at in the fourth one, but then finally answered, more or less, in the fourth and a half one. So this is not Paranormal Activity 5. This is kind of a side story that ties into all of them. It also ties into the first one in what I think is a pretty crazy way. And it introduces some new elements to the saga that we may not, may have been hinted at before, but weren't really made apparent. But yeah, I really liked it overall. Now that said, with the Marked Ones, we go back to douchey protagonists. It follows a Hispanic family that there's some weird goings on. Basically, there's an old woman who is sort of rumored to be a witch in their neighborhood, and so a couple of young men basically take it upon themselves to find out the truth, and but they do so in such douchey ways, like and the oh my god, why are you doing that? Things like Ouija boards and seances and whatnot. Like, we're back to, one of my big complaints about the first one, namely, let's antagonize the spirits. In this case, it's not so much that they're deliberately setting out to antagonize the spirits. It's more, I get a feeling like they're just kind of stumblingly meddling with forces that they cannot possibly comprehend, and bringing hell down upon themselves. So, yeah, pretty crazy. But if you get past, just kind of suffer through the first 30 minutes. There is some important stuff in there. The last hour of it is definitely worth checking out, as things start to get progressively weirder. In this case, how it relates is, it relates in some pretty direct ways, in that they find some stuff and some things happen towards the end. Don't want to say too much. Don't want to spoil things if you haven't seen it, but it relates in some other ways as well, as they kind of they find out some things about what the old woman, the witch lady, was doing, and what forces she was meddling with, and those forces begin to very directly affect one of the young men, and they also find out kind of why that's happening. So I think it's setting things up for the fifth one. Which I am definitely looking forward to. So overall, as you may have gathered, I really enjoyed this series a lot, and in particular, I really like the way that they've really gone out of their way to connect everything together. I mean, the dots line up, the dots connect, because often you don't see that in horror movie series. You'll see a lot of events changing or not being referred back to accurately, or being retconned, things like that. We don't really seem to be seeing that with Paranormal Activity. It seems to be a pretty consistent series, and they are clearly building a saga. They are building a story here and telling it in this found footage style. But I think it's really good. And for those who just kind of dismissed it after the first one or after one of the sequels, honestly, I think you're really missing out, because we don't see horror franchises like this done this well. I think a lot of people, unfortunately, just can't see past the found footage aspect of it, or as I say, are just a little lacking in the imagination department and can't see past and can't comprehend what all those subtle little things of doors opening and closing and things moving by themselves actually means, what it's actually implying. And I think that's very unfortunate, because by being so narrow-minded and focused on those things that really shouldn't matter, you're missing out on what's actually a really, really good story. with a lot of layers to it. Now, another complaint is, well, there's nothing new in it. It's like, actually, there's a lot new in it. I don't know how anyone can watch this and say that there's nothing new in it. Yes, it's some old ideas, the old creaky house with things moving and stuff, and you know, a bit of demonic possession in there. Yes, it's concepts that have been around since the dawn of freaking time, but this is a fresh take on them. And I mean, there's never been a horror movie series done this way before, you know, ever. I mean, most found footage films are one-off films, and that's it. I mean, Blair Witch had one, and then the sequel was not done as a found footage film. It was done just as a, you know, a different type of movie with a few little video footage bits thrown in. And yeah, and then we have the Wreck movies, where you had the first two were a found footage style, the third one is not. So different. I guess Wreck would be the closest equivalent to a horror saga done in the found footage style, but it's very different. I mean, it's not a haunted house movie; it's a zombie movie. But yeah, in short, I'm really enjoying the Paranormal Activity series. I'm actually really glad that I watched them all back to back, because when you do that, you really pick up on a lot of the subtle connections between them, and you because it's all still fresh in your mind. It's like, oh yeah, that refers back to that, and that connects with that, and that she's talking about that thing that happened. And yeah, it's a good series to marathon, because you pick up on all the subtle little connections between them, and the not so subtle connections, obviously. But yeah, so I'm definitely looking forward to number 5, and I will not be falling behind in this series again. Oh no, I will be picking them up as they come out from now on. Probably not going to bother seeing them in the theaters, because the Blu-rays are actually all extended editions, and it seems to be the way to go. In terms of extras, all of these are very bare bones. There's no commentary. There's no behind the scenes. No, that's pretty much it. Like, just quickly go through them here. We have the second one, quite nice, is a DVD Blu-ray combo. And in terms of extras, we have, yeah, we have a few minutes of additional found footage, and that's it. The third one, very nice. Again, we have DVD combo, DVD Blu-ray combo, and this is the one where the case is kind of falling apart because it was at the bottom of the bargain bin. Yeah, and this one we have Lost Tapes, where we get a couple of promos for the guy, the main character's doing like a wedding video business, so we get a couple of promos for that, and then some additional clips. Actually, some really fun. The additional footage in this was pretty hilarious, because it was basically pranks that the videographer guy plays on his wife, where he's like jumping out of cupboards and stuff at her. I actually really enjoyed that. It was a lot of fun. It was a refreshing little bit of lighthearted stuff in an otherwise pretty heavy-going series. Paranormal Activity 4, I of course got with the slipcover, quite nice. This again is a DVD. These are all DVD Blu-ray combo discs. So here we go. And then this one actually has the most running times worth of extras. So this actually includes both the theatrical version and the extended version. I don't think the other ones do. Oh no, the other ones do as well. Yeah, the other ones include both cuts, so that's very considerate of them. So this one includes the recovered files, which is actually about, it says 30 minutes, it's actually like 28 minutes, 45 seconds, but almost 30 minutes of additional footage, so you actually get quite a lot of additional material on this one to check out. Some of it, you know, some of it somewhat significant. And the marked ones, we have, again, the lovely lenticular slipcover, which I think I probably showed in the update. And then again, Blu-ray DVD combo disc inside. There we go. Not eco packs, which is nice. But and then in this one, in terms of extras, again, we get some additional footage. And that's pretty much it. So that's all you get. I'm imagining that once the series is complete, they'll probably release some big Uber box set edition that has tons of behind the scenes stuff, because I'd actually be really curious to see some behind the scenes info about this, and you know, a little bit of insight into the making of it, and sort of what their vision for the, you know, the plot was, and the continuing saga aspect of it. Because yeah, it's very well thought out and well executed. Alrighty, that is it from me to you for now. So let me just take a brief moment to thank my Patreon sponsors. Big thanks to Kyle Pellegrini and Nikolaus Schmidt, who are currently my two highest level sponsors. So thank you very much, guys. Definitely appreciate the support. And thank you to everyone else as well who has sponsored me over on Patreon. I really appreciate that. You're definitely helping to keep the magic happening here, and in bigger and better ways, and I really appreciate that. Alrighty, that is it for me to you for now. Once again, deja vu all over again. So thanks for watching. Until next time, sayonara.